Well, this is the 13th chapter, chapter 13 of Converging Media, and it is on mass communication and politics in the digital age. And perhaps I should have had this up a few days ago, but before the election, but this is after the election. Going back to the very earliest time, colonial newspapers were really literally partisan press. It would be like the Democratic Party or the Republican Party publishing their own newspaper. Of course, they actually do get involved in Republicans do own newspapers and Democrats do own newspapers, and a lot of times that reflects that as well. But they were literally aligned with particular parties. As you know, as time gone along, there has been a lot that has changed in political coverage. So there have been efforts at making it more fair and having less bias, but some of that tends to go away in times of extreme partisan politics. The book talks about media bias, and that's a real or perceived viewpoint held by journalists and news organizations that slants their news coverage unfairly. Now, I don't know if you can actually expect a journalist to not show anything of what that journalist believes within their reporting. I don't know that it is even necessary. I think there should be, however, some acknowledgement about person's politics to some degree. Well, I'm a Republican. I'm reporting this. You know going in that that's what I am. Then I'm reporting this, and so you can decide it's more or less fair based on whatever you want to. Of course, the politicians have learned a lot about how to use the news. They have news leaks. They sort of do news leaks to see what happens. News leaks find out how people respond to certain ideas before they make an announcement later, possibly. That's part of doing what's called a trial balloon. They leak information to the press about a plan or idea and then see how the public responds to it. Public opinion, of course, is huge, and for every person running for office, every politician running for office, public opinion is a huge thing that they're very interested in. They want to know more about, and they want to affect, of course. Talks about sound bites. The sound bites is the length of time a news subject is allowed to speak without editing. Uh, it's also come to refer to some short, catchy phrases that are said by politicians at times to capture media and public attention. In 1968, the average soundbite was 42 seconds. In 1988, it was 9.8 seconds. I don't know what it is now. There has been a change in the overall tone of political coverage. Have done some studies of how candidates were covered, and there is a slant, according to the studies that have been done, that toward more liberal and against more conservative candidates at times now. It's really interesting, though, because they did a study of the George Bush and Bill Clinton political race, and more than half, 60% of the reports about both of them were negative, and less than half of the reports about both of them were positive. Now, I say this thing about media bias. I mean, let's be realistic. We all know that if we're watching CNN, we know what we're going to get. We're watching MSNBC, we know what we're going to get. And to be blunt, if we're watching Fox News, we know what we're going to get. If you see any of those news sources as unfailing, unbiased, always telling the truth, then unfortunately you're not in contact with reality a little bit. And you're also much more susceptible to whatever it is they want to say and sell you. So be aware of that. About opinion polls, there are opinion polls that are done. I used to work for Southern Opinion Research, and I first called and then became a supervisor later. There are polls that pretend that they're opinion polls. They're actually called push polls. They're actually political advertising where they call and ask questions that are designed to sway the voters by giving them information that opposes one candidate or supports another one under the guise of conducting a poll. Now, of course, political advertising has gone up into the billions and billions of dollars, or hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't know exactly what the totals are every election year now. You might look that up. It'd be an interesting thing to ask your phone right now about the elections that just went by. They do know that negative advertising works in most campaigns. Negative advertising works. However, it does reach a level at a certain point in time whereby there's so much negative out there, no one knows quite who to believe. No one knows quite, where to go with it, whether it's good or bad or whatever it may be. Whether we support that candidate or don't support that candidate at a certain point in time of so many negative campaigns, it's problematic. It starts to lose effectiveness, I think, along the time it may. We'll see. Anyway, they've done some studies that found that that candidates who initiated negative ads lost 18 out of 25 elections. One ad campaign did that. So one study of ad campaigns found that the negative campaigns don't work. Politics and entertainment, of course. We know that the politics does bring in entertainment figures and music and people and endorsements and things along that line. Of course, there's political debates that take place in the election year and the coverage of that. And of course, you would say, well, where are the candidates not part of the two major parties on those debates? Well, there was there's some rules sort of written by the media in terms of who gets into a political debate. And you have to have a certain level of support in the polls to qualify, quote unquote, to get into the political debate. Anyway, of course, social media has become a powerful part of political campaigns. A lot of stuff's gone viral about various people, some of it false. I don't know how much of it is even accurate at all, but it's a dangerous thing in some ways. And of course, you know what memes are. I'm not going to go through some of the stuff that you know. There are a lot of changes in social media. In 2012, 10 million tweets were sent during the first presidential debate between President Obama and Mitt Romney. Whereas in 2008, there were only 1.8 million tweets, and who knows how many there were in this last campaign. This is somewhat outdated. There's some changing rules for politicians now. There's no such thing as off the record. You can tell a reporter something off the record, but let me tell you this right now. There's a huge percentage of those reporters that if it's juicy enough, they're going to find a way to release it or use it in some way to promote their station or their own career. Of course, campaign gaffes generate a lot of things sort of take a life of their own. In fact, our current president-elect campaigned for president, I think 2 or 3 times in the past, and in the primaries he would go forward, and sometime along the way he would say something that was, a gaffe, right? Just something he shouldn't have said, and he would drop out of the primary. But now he's our president-elect. Social media and civic engagement. A lot of people believe that it's actually the internet and social media has made it easier for people to get involved in political campaigns and even in public policy. Going to go forward through some of this. Talks about smart mob, a coin term that actually defines a group of people communicating with each other via text messaging and wireless networks to coordinate their activities. Political polarization and media habits. This is over on page 405. A lot of times people look for truth, and which news sources they trust is affected by their political ideology. That's just kind of an obvious thing. The reality is, I'm a Republican, I'm conservative. I watch CNN, I watch MSNBC, I watch Fox News, I watch all three. I don't completely trust or believe any of them, and it's everything that they say, and somehow believing that that's going to be accurate. Okay. So some I trust more than others, some I trust less than others, but I do watch all three, and I actually do that on purpose because I want to see how various things are being presented by various sides. I believe it's a good way to sort of keep a balanced view of what's going on. A lot of stuff out there in terms of the media jobs in the political field. If you're good with the media, if you're good with starting a social media firestorm, you can get hired by a politician to help him get elected. A lot of stuff out there that can be done that way. That is chapter 13. I'm going to stop this and get it